The gardener overhears a call in the mansion. Little did he know it would change his life forever. Walter Jenkins never imagined that tending to the plants at the Harrison mansion for 15 years would place him at the center of a secret that would shake the entire family. The 55-year-old man had always been discreet, carrying out his duties with dedication and keeping his distance from the affairs of the main house. It was while pruning the white roses in the front garden that he accidentally overheard the phone call that would change everything. Tyler Harrison, the youngest son of his employer, was walking down the inner hallway while speaking softly into his phone. The words echoed through the open window. "She's alive, but he must never find out." Walter's heart raced. His hands trembled as he held the pruning shears. For 3 long years, he had watched his employer, businessman Richard Harrison, mourn his wife Margaret, who had supposedly died in a car accident. The 70-year-old man visited her grave every week, spoke to her photo on the nightstand, and kept her room exactly as she had left it. Walter tried to focus on the roses, but the words kept echoing in his mind. Tyler had always been arrogant and distant with the staff, but now his words hinted at something far darker. If Margaret was alive, where could she be? Why would Tyler hide this from his own father? The gardener knew the family dynamics well. Richard had been a widower when he married Margaret, who was 20 years his junior. Tyler, the son from his first marriage, had never accepted his stepmother, especially after she began involving herself in the family business. Harrison & Sons was a traditional construction company in Denver, founded by Richard's grandfather. That afternoon, Walter could barely finish his work. His hands were clammy as he watered the azaleas Margaret had loved so much. She had always chatted with him about the plants, asked about his family, and treated all the staff with respect. She was a 45-year-old woman, elegant, intelligent, who had brought new life to that mansion. When he got home at the end of the day, Walter couldn't focus on anything. His wife, Sharon, noticed something was wrong. "You're not yourself today, Walt. Did something happen at work?" "It's nothing really, just tired," he lied, but Sharon had known her husband for 30 years and could tell when he was worried. During dinner, their 25-year-old daughter, Emily, who was studying nursing, noticed her father's silence. "Dad, you haven't even touched your food. Are you sure you're okay?" Walter forced a smile and changed the subject, asking about her studies. But inside, his mind was swirling with doubts and questions. If Margaret really was alive, did he have a moral duty to tell Richard? But how could he prove something he'd only overheard by chance? What if he was wrong? The next morning, Walter arrived at the mansion early, hoping to hear more. The house was enormous, with gardens stretching nearly 2 acres in the Cherry Hills neighborhood. He knew every corner, every plant, every routine of the family. Richard came down for breakfast with his usual weary expression. The man had aged rapidly after his wife's supposed death. His gray hair seemed whiter by the day, and he moved with less energy. "Good morning, Walter," his employer greeted him, as he did every morning. "Good morning, Mr. Richard. How did you sleep?" "Not well, as usual. Those sleeping pills aren't working anymore." Walter's chest tightened. Seeing his employer's suffering, knowing it might all be unnecessary, was torture. But he decided to wait and observe more before taking any action. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Now continuing. During the week, Walter kept a close eye on every move Tyler made. The 32-year-old had a degree in business administration and worked for the family company, but he always seemed more interested in the inheritance than the business itself. He owned his own apartment, but often slept at the mansion, especially when his father was away on business. On Thursday, Walter was trimming the hydrangeas near the library when he heard hurried footsteps. Tyler entered the room and closed the door, but the windows were open to let in fresh air. The gardener crouched behind the bushes and stayed perfectly still. The phone rang, and Tyler answered nervously. "Hello? Yes, it's me. What do you mean the price went up?" "No, I can't pay more than that." "Listen, she's stable, right? Then she doesn't need anything else for now." A long pause. "Look, doctor, my father can't know anything about this. If he finds out she's alive, I lose everything, understand? Everything I've built over these 3 years will go down the drain. Yes, I know it's complicated, but you're being paid well to keep it quiet." Walter's heart pounded so hard he feared it might give him away. Tyler was paying someone to keep Margaret hidden. But where? And why? "No, I can't visit her now. My father's already suspicious about my comings and goings. Keep up the treatment and call me if there's any change. And doctor, remember what we discussed. If anyone comes asking about her, you know nothing." The call ended, and Tyler stormed out of the library, slamming the door behind him. Walter stayed hidden for a few more minutes, processing what he'd just heard. Margaret was receiving some kind of medical treatment. Tyler was paying for it, and he was desperate to keep his father from finding out. But something didn't add up. Why would Tyler keep his stepmother alive and hidden? If he wanted to get rid of her to claim the inheritance, wouldn't it be easier to... No. Walter pushed the dark thought away. There had to be another explanation. That evening, he talked to Sharon in their backyard while she watered her plants. "Sharon, can I ask you a hypothetical question?" "Of course, dear. If you knew a huge secret, one that could help someone but also cause a lot of trouble, what would you do?" Sharon stopped watering and looked at her husband with concern. "Walt, what kind of secret is this?" "Just a question, really. Something I saw on a soap opera." "Well, I think the truth is always better than a lie, no matter how painful. But it depends on the consequences." "Why are you asking?" Walter brushed it off, but his wife's answer echoed in his mind all night. The truth is always better than a lie. But how could he uncover the whole truth before acting? On Friday, Walter made a decision. He'd start investigating discreetly. He knew several employees at Harrison & Sons, having done some landscaping work at their offices before. Maybe he could find out something about Tyler's financial activities. During lunch, he went to the company and looked for Hank, the doorman who'd worked there longer than Walter had been at the mansion. "Hey, Hank, how's everything?" "Oh, Walt, what a surprise to see you here. All's well, thank God. And you, how's work at the boss's place?" "Going fine. Listen, can I ask you something? Have you noticed anything unusual about Tyler's behavior lately?" Hank glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "Between you and me, that boy's been acting real strange. Shows up here all jumpy, makes secret calls, leaves without a word. And another thing, he asked Catherine from accounting to stop sending the bank statements to the house, that he'd pick them up personally." "Bank statements?" "Yeah, the company account. They used to always send a copy to Richard, but now Tyler said he'd handle it himself. Catherine thought it was odd, but he is the owner's son, right?" Walter thanked her for the information and left, deep in thought. Tyler was controlling the financial details that reached his father. That could mean he was siphoning money to pay for Margaret's medical expenses. On Saturday, Richard left for his weekly visit to the cemetery, as he did religiously every weekend. Walter always felt a deep sadness watching his boss leave with fresh flowers for his wife's grave. Today, knowing it might all be a lie, the feeling was even worse. Tyler took advantage of his father's absence to make a long phone call from the office. Walter, who was cleaning the pool in the back, managed to overhear part of the conversation through the open window. "Dr. Collins, I need to know exactly what her condition is. I understand the amnesia could be reversible, but what if she regains her memory? No, I can't take that risk. Keep her sedated, but nothing that could permanently harm her health." Walter nearly dropped the cleaning net into the pool. Margaret had amnesia, and Tyler was keeping her sedated so she wouldn't remember what had happened. But remember what? What had she discovered that made Tyler take such drastic action? "Listen, Doctor, if anyone from the family shows up asking questions, stick to the story we agreed on. She had a serious accident, lost her memory, and the family requested privacy." "Yes, I know it's irregular, but you're being paid very well for this." The call ended, and Walter quickly finished cleaning the pool, stepping away from the window before Tyler could spot him. His mind raced with the new information. Margaret hadn't died in a car accident. She'd discovered something about Tyler, and he'd faked her death, keeping her sedated and memoryless somewhere. But Walter needed more details before acting. Where was she being held? What exactly had she found out? And how could he prove it to Richard without putting Margaret's life at risk? On Monday, Walter decided to search more systematically. While cleaning Tyler's office, he looked for any clue about Margaret's whereabouts. That's when he found a torn envelope from a private clinic in the trash. The letterhead read, New Hope Medical Center, specialized neurology and psychiatry treatment, located in Aurora, the Denver metro area. The envelope was addressed to Tyler Harrison, but the contents had been destroyed. Walter discreetly noted the clinic's address and phone number. It was a start, but he still needed more. How could he confirm if Margaret was really there without raising suspicion? The answer came unexpectedly. His daughter Emily had mentioned she was doing internships at different hospitals and clinics in the area as part of her nursing program. Maybe she could help. That night, Walter spoke with his daughter. Emily, do you know New Hope Medical Center in Aurora? I do, Dad. It's a very expensive private clinic, specializing in neurological and psychiatric treatments. Why do you ask? Just heard someone mention it. Have you interned there? No, but I have a friend from school who works there as a nursing assistant, Rachel. Why? Walter made up an excuse about possibly recommending the clinic to someone with memory problems, but his mind was already working. Perhaps through Emily's friend he could find out if Margaret was really admitted there. Dad, if you want, I can ask Rachel to give some information about the clinic. That would be good, yes. But don't worry too much about it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On Tuesday, Emily called her father during lunch break. Dad, I talked to Rachel about New Hope Medical Center. She said it's a very good place, but some patients have been there for years without family visits. She said it's sad to see forgotten people there. Forgotten people? Yeah, she mentioned a woman in her early 40s who's been there for 3 years, very elegant, but never gets visitors. The payment always comes through bank transfer, and the family requested total confidentiality. Rachel said the woman keeps asking when her family will visit, but no one ever shows up. Walter Jenkins's heart raced. A woman in her early 40s, admitted for 3 years, no family visits, and payment via bank transfer. It had to be Margaret. This woman... Does Rachel know her name? I don't think so, Dad. Why so much interest? Just curiosity, sweetheart. Thanks for the info. Walter spent the rest of the day restless. Now he was almost certain where Margaret was, but he still needed to find a way to confirm it, and most importantly, help her without putting everyone in danger. On Wednesday, the situation grew even tenser. Richard received an unexpected visit from Barbara, Margaret's sister, who had come from Chicago to visit her sister's grave on the 3rd anniversary of the supposed accident. Walter was trimming the front lawn when he saw the woman arrive by taxi. She was around 50, with dark hair and a deep sadness in her expression. Tyler, who was home that day, visibly tensed at his aunt's arrival. Barbara, what a surprise! Dad didn't tell me you were coming. Tyler, dear, I told your father yesterday. I came to spend a few days here to visit Margaret's grave and settle some unfinished business. Unfinished business? Yes, about the assets she left behind. I need to sort out a few things to finally close the estate. Walter noticed Tyler's growing nervousness. The young man began to sweat and his hands trembled slightly. I don't know if it's necessary to dig into that now, Barbara. Dad has already suffered so much. Tyler, it's been 3 years. It's time to settle these matters. Besides, I found some strange things in the papers Margaret left in Chicago. Strange things? Richard appeared at the door just then, embracing his sister-in-law warmly. Barbara, my dear, how are you? Well, Richard, I've missed you all. Come in, come in. Walter, could you take Mrs. Barbara's bags to the guest room? Walter picked up the bags and carried them inside, but stayed close enough to hear the conversation in the living room. Richard, I need to talk to you about some things I found among Margaret's papers. Of course, go ahead. She had notes about irregularities in the company, strange payments, transfers to accounts she didn't recognize. Do you know anything about this? Walter saw Tyler turn completely pale. The young man tried to hide it, but he was clearly panicking. Barbara, Maybe those are old notes from when she was still learning about the business, Tyler interjected. No, Tyler. The notes are from a week before the accident. She had discovered something and was investigating. Richard looked at his son, confused. Son, do you know anything about this? Of course not, Dad. Perhaps Barbara is misinterpreting the notes. Tyler, I brought everything with me. Their specific numbers, dates, amounts. Margaret discovered someone was embezzling money from the company, and she was preparing a report to show you, Richard. The silence that followed was deafening. Walter felt as if all the pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. Margaret had found out Tyler was stealing from the company. She was going to tell her husband, but Tyler stopped her, faking his own death and keeping her hospitalized and sedated. Where are these notes? Richard asked, his voice grave. They're in my bag. I can show them now if you'd like. It doesn't have to be now, Barb, Tyler quickly interjected. Dad is tired, and you must be too. How about we leave it for tomorrow? No, Tyler. I want to see those notes now, Richard said with a firmness Walter hadn't heard in years. Barbara went upstairs to fetch the papers from her bag. Tyler seized the moment to approach his father. Dad, don't listen to this. Barb has always been jealous of Margaret for marrying you. She might be making things up to stir trouble. Tyler, your stepmother never lied to me. If she found irregularities, there were irregularities. But Dad, enough, Tyler. Let's wait and see what Barbara brought. Walter finished packing the bags and went down to the garden, but his mind was racing. The situation was escalating quickly. If Barbara really had proof of what Margaret had uncovered, Tyler would be exposed. But what would happen to Margaret? Tyler might do something desperate to keep the secret. He needed to act fast. But how? If he told Richard what he'd discovered without concrete evidence, it would just be his word against Tyler's. And even if he could prove Margaret was alive, how would he explain where she was and why she hadn't given any sign of life? The afternoon was tense. Barbara showed Richard all of Margaret's notes, including suspicious bank account numbers and amounts that didn't match the company's official records. Richard grew increasingly serious as he examined the papers. Tyler, can you explain these transfers here? Richard held up some papers for his son. Dad, those must be authorized transfers. Maybe Margaret wasn't aware of all the business details. Tyler, these aren't company accounts. They're personal accounts. And Margaret noted here that you were the one who authorized these transfers. Dad, I can explain all of this tomorrow. I need to get some documents from the office. No, Tyler, I want explanations now. Walter was watering the plants near the living room window and could see the tension rising between father and son. Tyler was cornered and looked increasingly desperate. All right, Dad. Yes, I made some transfers, but it was for investments that hadn't been officially approved yet. I was going to return the money as soon as the investments paid off. How many transfers, Tyler? Not many. How many? Richard raised his voice for the first time in years. Maybe around $500,000 over the last few years. Barbara and Richard were stunned. $500,000 was a significant amount, even for a company the size of Harrison & Sons. Tyler, you stole $500,000 from the company? I didn't steal, Dad. They were investments. I was going to return it all. In 3 years, you haven't returned a cent. And Margaret found out, didn't she? Tyler fell silent, sweating profusely. Answer me, Tyler. Did Margaret discover what you were doing? She was looking into some things, but I explained to her they were temporary investments. And she accepted that explanation? She said she was going to talk to you about it. Richard stood up and began pacing the room, clearly shaken. Is that why you've been acting so strange in the weeks before the accident? Is that why you and Margaret were arguing? Dad, it was nothing serious. Just a disagreement about business strategies. A disagreement? Tyler, you were stealing from the company. And Margaret found out. Walter Jenkins felt the time had come to act. The truth about the theft was coming to light, but Richard still didn't know his wife was alive. If he acted now, he might be able to settle everything at once. He put away the hose and walked to the living room door. "Excuse me, Mr. Richard. May I speak with you for a moment?" "Not now, Walter. We're in the middle of an important conversation." "That's exactly what I need to talk to you about, sir. It's very important." Richard looked at him in surprise. In 15 years of service, Walter had never interfered in family matters. "What do you mean, Walter?" "Sir, I've overheard some things that might be important for this conversation." Tyler stared at the gardener with sheer panic. "What kind of things?" Barbara asked. Walter took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. "I heard Mr. Tyler's phone calls about Mrs. Margaret." "What calls?" Richard stepped closer to the gardener. "Sir, I don't know how to say this, but I think Mrs. Margaret might still be alive." The silence that followed was absolute. Richard turned pale, Barbara covered her mouth in shock, and Tyler looked like he might faint. "What did you say?" Richard asked, his voice trembling. "I heard Mr. Tyler talking on the phone about her being alive, about payments to a doctor, about keeping it quiet." "That's a lie," Tyler shouted. "He's making this up to ruin me." "Mr. Tyler, I heard you talking about a clinic, about sedatives, about amnesia." Richard moved even closer to Walter. "What clinic, Walter?" "New Hope Medical Center in Aurora. Mr. Tyler gets mail from there." Tyler finally broke down. "Stop! Stop this!" he screamed, then began to sob. "Fine, fine, she's alive. But you don't understand the situation." Richard had to lean on the armchair to keep from collapsing. "Margaret is alive." "My Margaret is alive?" "Dad, let me explain." "Explain now. Explain why my wife is in a clinic while I've been thinking she was dead for 3 years. Because she was going to ruin me. She found out about the money and was going to tell you everything. I'd lose it all." "So you'd rather I thought she was dead?" "I didn't want her to die. That's why I put her in a good clinic. She's being well cared for." Barbara started crying. "My sister is alive, after 3 years of believing she was gone." "How did you do this, Tyler? How did you fake her death?" I caused the accident, but not to hurt her, just to stun her. Then I paid the hospital doctor to declare she had died from her injuries, but she was only unconscious. When she woke up, she had amnesia from the trauma. And you decided to keep her that way. I didn't know what else to do. If she recovered her memory and came home, she'd turn me in. If I let her go, she'd remember everything eventually. The only solution was to keep her in the clinic until I could replace the money. For 3 years, Tyler. 3 years I've cried for her every night. Dad, I was going to tell you once I fixed everything. Liar! You were never going to tell. You'd have let her die in that clinic. Walter's heart raced as he watched Richard's despair. The man he'd admired for 15 years had suffered needlessly for 3 years because of his own son's greed. "Mr. Richard, if I may, I think we should go to the clinic right now." "Yes, let's go. Barbara, are you coming with us?" "Of course I'm going. She's my sister." "And you, Tyler, will take us there and explain to the doctors that this farce is over." "Dad, it's not that simple. Tyler, you have 2 choices. Either you come with us and fix this properly, or I call the police right now." "All right, Dad, I'll go." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now back to the story. The drive to New Hope Medical Center was tense and silent. Richard drove with trembling hands, Barbara cried softly in the back seat, and Tyler sat pale and slumped beside her. Walter Jenkins had asked to go with them, feeling responsible for seeing the situation resolved to the end. The clinic was a modern, well-kept building surrounded by gardens that reminded Walter of his work at the mansion. The receptionist greeted them with her usual professional smile, but was clearly confused when Tyler explained they wanted to visit the patient, Margaret Harrison. "Mr. Tyler, but you've always said she couldn't have visitors." "The situation has changed. This is her husband, and this is her sister. They have the right to see her. But you'll need to speak with Dr. Collins first. He's at the hospital today, but I can call him." "Yes, please call him." As they waited, Richard paced nervously through the lobby. Walter had never seen his boss so agitated. Walter, thank you for telling the truth. You could have stayed quiet and avoided this mess. Mr. Richard, I couldn't watch you suffer knowing it might have been unnecessary. How must she be? Will she even recognize me? I'm sure she will, sir. True love isn't completely forgotten. Dr. Collins arrived an hour later, visibly nervous. He was a short, bald man in his 50s who avoided looking directly at Richard. Mr. Harrison, Doctor, I want to see my wife now. Sir, the situation is a bit complicated. The patient has had episodes of mental confusion. Dr. Collins, Tyler interjected, you can tell the truth. They know everything. The doctor glanced around as if searching for an escape. Well, the truth is Mrs. Margaret has been stable. The initial amnesia was real, caused by trauma, but lately she's been recovering fragmented memories. What does that mean? Barbara asked. It means she sometimes remembers things from the past, but can't yet connect everything. She often talks about a garden, white roses, a man she loves, but she doesn't recall names or faces clearly. Richard began to cry. She remembers our garden, the roses I planted for her. Sir, there's something else I must tell you, the doctor continued. She's been asking a lot about family lately, says she feels someone is waiting for her, that she needs to go home. Why wasn't this told to us sooner? Richard asked Tyler. Because I was afraid, Dad, afraid she'd remember everything and report me. Can I see her now? Of course, sir. But I must warn you, she may not recognize you right away. And it might be best not to reveal everything at once. It could be too much of a shock. They went up to the 5th floor of the clinic. The hallway was quiet and well lit, with potted plants that reminded Walter of the care he'd put into the mansion's gardens. The doctor stopped at the door of room 507. She's in here. Maybe just a few of you should go in first, so as not to overwhelm her. Richard took a deep breath and slowly opened the door. Through the crack, Walter saw an elegant woman with dark hair and sad eyes, sitting in an armchair by the window. Even after 3 years in the clinic, she still carried the poise and beauty that had always defined her. Margaret? Richard called softly. She turned her face and her eyes met her husband's. For a few seconds there was only silence. Then, slowly, a tear rolled down her cheek. I know I recognize you, she said hoarsely. You appear in my dreams, but they say you don't exist. I do exist, my dear, I exist and I'm here. Richard moved closer slowly and knelt beside her armchair. You take care of a garden, she continued, lightly touching his face. There are white roses and a fountain where little birds drink water. Yes, Margaret, our garden, our home. Our home, she repeated, confused. Yes, you lived with me. We were married. You're my wife. Married? She looked at him with sudden clarity. Richard, you're Richard? Yes, my dear, it's me. She began to cry and threw herself into his arms. Richard, where were you? Why did it take you so long to come for me? I knew you'd come. I didn't know where you were, Margaret. I thought I'd lost you. Lost me? But I'm here. I've always been here. Why didn't you come for me sooner? Richard looked at Tyler, who was leaning against the wall, silently crying. It's a long story, darling. What matters is that we're together now. Barbara entered the room at that moment, and Margaret recognized her immediately. Barb? My sister? Maggie? My dear Maggie? The sisters embraced and cried together while Richard held his wife's hand, as if afraid she might disappear again. Doctor, Richard addressed the physician, when can she be discharged? Well, sir, technically she could leave today. There's nothing physically wrong with her. The hospitalization was only maintained due to other circumstances. Then we're going home now. Richard, Margaret looked at him. Why was I here? What happened to me? You had an accident, darling, but everything's fine now. We'll go home and you'll remember everything little by little. Margaret looked around and saw Walter standing near the door. You, she exclaimed joyfully. You take care of my plants, you're Walter. Walter stepped forward, emotional. Yes, Mrs. Margaret, it's me. I kept tending the garden, waiting for you to return. My white roses? Are they all right? They're beautiful, ma'am. They were waiting for you to come back to bloom fully. I want to see them. I want to go home now. Richard quickly arranged Margaret's discharge. Tyler spoke with Dr. Collins about finalizing payments and the necessary paperwork. Throughout the process, he remained downcast and remorseful. On the way home, Margaret asked many questions about the 3 years she had lost. Richard answered carefully, initially avoiding mention that she had been declared dead. Richard, why do I feel like I've lost so much time? Why do I feel like something terrible happened? You had amnesia because of the accident, darling, but don't worry about that now. What matters is you're coming home. And Tyler, why is he so quiet? He used to talk more with me. Richard and Barbara exchanged a meaningful glance. Tyler is processing some difficult things, Margaret. You'll talk calmly at home. When they arrived at the mansion, Margaret stepped out of the car and looked at the garden Walter had tended with such care. Her eyes filled with tears. It's exactly as I remembered, as I dreamed. Walter kept everything ready for your return, darling. Walter, she turned to the gardener, thank you. Thank you for taking care of our home. It was my pleasure, Mrs. Margaret. This garden wouldn't be the same without you. They entered the house and Margaret walked slowly through the rooms, touching objects and recovering memories bit by bit. This table. I remember having coffee here with you every morning. Yes, dear. And you read so many books in this library armchair. What about the office? Why do I feel something important happened in the office? Richard took a deep breath. It was time to start revealing the truth. Margaret, sit here with me. I need to tell you a few things about what happened before your accident. They sat on the living room couch with Barbara beside them and Tyler still standing nervous. What happened, Richard? You were looking into some irregularities at the company. Tyler did some wrong things with the company's money. Margaret looked at Tyler, her expression slowly shifting from confusion to understanding. The transfers, the amounts that didn't add up. I remember, I found out he was stealing. Yes, dear. I was going to tell you. I had prepared a full report. I know. Barbara brought your notes today. Margaret stood and walked toward Tyler. Was that it? The accident happened because of this? Tyler finally met her eyes. Margaret, I never meant for you to get hurt. I just wanted to stop you from telling Dad before I could explain. Explain what? That you were stealing from your own father. I was going to pay it back. They were investments. Investments in what, Tyler? Your own bank account? Margaret's memory was returning fast, and with it, the anger and disappointment she felt toward Tyler. You caused the accident on purpose, didn't you? Tyler couldn't answer, only nodding. And after? What happened after the accident? Margaret, Richard intervened, maybe it's better for you to learn everything little by little. No, Richard, I want to know now. What's today's date? October 17th, 2024. 2024. But when was the accident? 3 years ago, dear. 3 years? I was hospitalized for 3 years. Yes. Margaret looked around, processing the information. And you all? Where did you think I was these past 3 years? The silence in the room was heavy. Barbara began crying again. Margaret, we thought that you didn't survive the accident. What do you mean? Tyler faked your death, said you passed away at the hospital from your injuries. Margaret was in shock, looking between Richard and Tyler. You thought I was dead? For 3 years? Yes, dear. Richard, did you mourn me? Did you suffer thinking I was gone? Every day, Margaret. Every day for 3 years. She turned to Tyler with a fury that frightened everyone in the room. You let your father suffer for 3 years thinking I was dead? You let my sister suffer for 3 years? Margaret, you stole 3 years of my life. 3 years I could have spent with my family. 3 years your father spent in unnecessary pain. I didn't know how to fix it. You fix it by telling the truth, owning up to what you did. Margaret paced the room, clearly trying to process everything. Where's my grave? Where did you think I was buried? At Hilltop Memorial Gardens, Richard answered softly. And you visited my grave? Every week. I brought white roses. Margaret collapsed onto the couch, crying. 3 years, Richard. 3 years we didn't spend together. 3 years I couldn't tend to our garden. 3 years I couldn't comfort you when you were sad. But you're here now, dear. Now we can make up for lost time. And Tyler, what's going to happen to him? Richard looked at his son, who awaited the verdict. Tyler will have to face the consequences of his actions, for both the theft and what he did to you. Dad, I'll accept any punishment. I know what I did was unforgivable. It's not me you need to make things right with first, son. It's Margaret. Tyler approached his stepmother and knelt before her. Margaret, I know there's no forgiveness for what I've done, but I want you to know how deeply I regret it. Every single day these past 3 years, I thought about telling the truth, but I was afraid of the consequences. Afraid of the consequences for you, Tyler, not for us. You're right, I was selfish and a coward. What will you do now? I'll return all the money I stole. I'll turn myself in to the authorities, and I'll pay for the medical treatment you'll need to fully recover from these 3 years. Margaret looked at him for a long moment. Tyler, what you did was terrible, but you're Richard's son, and I don't want to destroy this family any more than it already has been. What does that mean? It means I won't report you, but under conditions. What conditions? First, you'll return every penny you stole with interest. Yes. Second, you'll step away from the company until you prove you've truly changed. Yes. Third, you'll do community service helping people who really need it to learn the value of things. I accept. And fourth, you'll pay for therapy for yourself and all of us to deal with the trauma you caused. I accept everything. Richard walked over to his wife and embraced her. Margaret, you've always been too generous. It's not generosity, Richard. It's pragmatism. If I destroy Tyler, I destroy you too. And we've already lost too much time. Walt, who had silently observed the entire conversation, stepped forward. Mr. Richard, Mrs. Margaret, if I may, I'd like to say something. Of course, Walt. These past 3 years, I've seen Mr. Richard's suffering. I watched him visit the grave, tend to the plants you loved, talk about you every day. I also saw Mr. Tyler's guilt, even without knowing exactly why. Now I see that true love can overcome any hardship. Thank you, Walt. You were crucial in bringing this truth to light. I only did what was right, Mom. And it was very brave, Richard added. You could have stayed silent and stayed out of it. Sir, I've worked for this family for 15 years. You're more than employers to me, you're family. That night, Margaret wanted to sleep in her own room for the first time in 3 years. Richard was nervous, worried she might have nightmares or struggle to readjust. Richard, show me the clothes you kept. I kept everything exactly as you left it. He opened the closet, and Margaret saw all her clothes still hanging, smelling of the fabric softener she always used. You took care of everything. I couldn't bring myself to move a thing. It was like you'd walk back in any moment. And now I have. They lay down together, but neither found sleep easily. There was too much to process, too much to talk about, too much to heal. Richard, how did you feel when you thought I was gone? It was like a part of me died too. I only kept living because I thought it was what you'd want. And how do you feel now? Like I'm in a dream, afraid I'll wake up and find none of this is real. It's real, my love, I'm here. The next morning, Margaret woke early and went to the garden. Walt was already there, watering the plants as he had every morning for 15 years. Good morning, Walt. Good morning, Mrs. Margaret. How did you sleep? Well, all things considered, can I help you with the plants today? Of course, ma'am. It'd be an honor. They worked together in silence for a while, each lost in thought. Walt, why did you choose to help me? Wouldn't it have been easier to pretend you heard nothing? Ma'am, I have a daughter about the age you were when you married Mr. Richard. If someone did to her what they did to you, I'd want someone to help her. Your daughter must be very lucky to have a father like you. Thank you, Mom. And Mr. Richard is very lucky to have a wife like you. Richard appeared at the kitchen door just then, watching Margaret and Walter working together in the garden. It was a scene he had dreamed of countless times during the 3 years she'd been gone. Margaret, the coffee's ready. I'll be right there, dear. She stood up, wiped her hands on her dirt-streaked clothes and headed toward the house. As she passed Richard, he pulled her into a tight embrace. I still can't believe you're here. Believe it, my love. And now we'll make up for all the lost time. During breakfast, they talked about the next steps. Margaret would need medical follow-up to ensure there were no lasting effects from her prolonged hospitalization. Tyler would temporarily move back to his apartment to give the couple space to readjust. Barbara would stay a few more days to help with the transition. Margaret, do you want to press charges against Tyler? No, Richard. Like I said yesterday, I'd rather he meet the conditions I set. I think that will teach him more than prison ever could. What about the money he stole? That does need to be resolved legally. He'll have to return every penny and pay a fine. I agree. Tyler came down for breakfast looking visibly worn out. He'd spent the night awake, thinking about what he'd done and the consequences of his actions. Good morning, he said quietly. Good morning, Tyler, Margaret replied. Sit here, we need to talk about a few details. Of course. First, I want a complete list of everything you stole from the company. Amounts, dates, where the money went. I have it all recorded on my computer. Second, I want the names of everyone involved in the scheme to fake my death. The doctor, the hospital staff, anyone who knew the truth. There aren't many, mostly Dr. Collins. They'll have to face the consequences too. I understand. And third, I want you to write a letter in your own hand to your father, asking for forgiveness and explaining in detail what you did. Not to satisfy me, but for you to truly grasp the gravity of your actions. All right? Richard watched the conversation in silence. Margaret had always been firm but fair, and she was handling the situation with a maturity he admired. Tyler, Richard finally spoke, you know our relationship will never be the same again, don't you? I know, Dad. But that doesn't mean I've stopped loving you. It means you'll have to prove you deserve my trust again. I will, Dad, no matter how long it takes. In the days that followed, life at the mansion slowly settled into a new rhythm. Margaret returned to tending the garden with Walter, rediscovering her lifelong passion for plants. Richard cancelled all his work commitments to stay by her side, helping her recover her memories and readjust to normal life. Barbara extended her stay to support her sister, but also to process her own trauma of believing Margaret had been dead for 3 years. Maggie, you know I never quite believed the accident story, right? Why not? Because you were always so careful, never drove recklessly, always wore your seatbelt. A crash that severe seemed impossible. But you didn't question it. I did. But Tyler always had an answer. Said you were distracted by company troubles, that it had rained and the road was slick. He thought of everything. That's what bothers me most. He planned it all so coldly. Margaret was in the library rereading some of her favorite books from before the accident when Richard found her. How are you feeling? Strange. It's like I'm the same person but also different. 3 years changed everyone except me. You don't think you've changed? Physically, not much. Mentally, I think I've become more distrustful, more cautious. The experience at the clinic left its mark. What was it like there? Lonely. Very lonely. I knew I had a family, but I couldn't remember who they were. I dreamed of you, of this house, of the garden, but I'd wake up unable to connect the dreams to reality. Did you suffer a lot? Yes. Mostly because I felt something was wrong, but no one gave me convincing answers. Dr. Collins always said it was better not to force my memory, that the memories would come back naturally. He was harming you on purpose. I know that now. Back then, I just felt a deep sadness, a sense that I'd lost something very important. Richard sat beside her and took her hand. Margaret, I want to ask you something, but you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Go ahead. Do you forgive me for not realizing you were alive? Margaret looked at him in surprise. Richard, how could you have known? Tyler faked my death. You saw the death certificate. You attended the funeral. But I feel like I should have noticed something. I should have been suspicious. My love, you were in shock. Grieving people can't think clearly. It wasn't your fault. Sometimes I wonder if, deep down, I knew something was wrong. I dreamed of you alive. I'd wake up feeling you were near. That was love, Richard. The heart knows things the mind can't explain. They embraced, and Margaret felt she was finally truly home. A week after her return, Margaret decided she wanted to visit her own grave. Richard tried to dissuade her, thinking it would be traumatic, but she insisted. "I need to see it, Richard. I need to fully understand what happened." They went to Hilltop Memorial Gardens on a sunny morning. The grave was simple but well kept, with a white marble headstone and a small garden around it. There were fresh white roses, which Richard had brought a few days earlier. "You really came here every week?" "Religiously. It was the only way I felt close to you." "What did you do here?" "I talked to you, told you about my day, about the garden plants, about how I was coping with missing you." Margaret knelt before the headstone and read the inscription, "Margaret Harrison, beloved wife, virtuous woman, may your memory be eternal." "Who chose the words?" "I did, with Barbara's help." "They're beautiful words." "You deserved beautiful words." "What should we do with the grave now?" "I don't know. I never thought about this situation. I think we should keep it. It can serve as a reminder of the importance of truth, of cherishing every day we have together." "You want to keep your own grave?" "I do. Not as a place of mourning, but as a place of reflection. A place to remember that life is precious and shouldn't be wasted." They stayed there for an hour, talking about the lost 3 years, their plans for the future and the importance of forgiveness and second chances. When they returned home, they found Walter in the garden with a surprise. He had planted a new rose bush, with roses of a variety Margaret had never seen before. "Walter, what kind of roses are these?" "Special roses, ma'am. They're called Resurrection. I found them at a specialty nursery. Thought they'd be fitting to mark your return." "They're beautiful, thank you." "Ma'am, can I say something?" "Of course." "These 3 years were very hard for all of us, but I believe God has a purpose for everything. Maybe you needed to go through this so we'd all learn to cherish family, truth, and love even more." "You're right, Walter. As painful as it was, I think we all came out of this experience stronger and more aware of what truly matters in life." That afternoon, Tyler came to the mansion to deliver the letter he had written to his father. It was a long, detailed text where he fully took responsibility for his actions and expressed genuine remorse. "Dad, I know words can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm determined to make things right." "How do you plan to do that, son?" "I've already started returning the money. I'll sell my apartment and my car to cover the full amount. I also signed up to volunteer at a facility that cares for abandoned elderly." "Why that facility?" "Because I want to work with people who've been forgotten by their families, like I did with Margaret. I want to understand the pain I caused." Margaret, who was listening to the conversation, stepped closer. "Tyler, how long have you been planning this change?" "Since the day the truth came out. I know it might seem opportunistic, but it's not. I've known for a long time I was on the wrong path, but I didn't have the courage to change." "What gave you the courage now?" "Seeing the suffering I caused, seeing how close I came to destroying the family, seeing how I could have lost the chance to redeem myself forever." "And what do you hope to gain from this change?" "I don't expect to gain anything, Margaret. I just hope to live with myself. I hope one day I can look in the mirror and not feel ashamed." Richard watched his son with a mix of sadness and hope. "Tyler, real change is a long process. Don't expect Margaret and me to trust you quickly." "I understand, Dad. I don't expect immediate forgiveness. I just hope for the chance to prove I can be different." "You have that chance, son. The rest is up to you." 2 weeks later, the Harrison family received an unexpected visitor. It was young Rachel, Emily's friend who worked at New Hope Medical Center. She had come to speak with Walter about Margaret's situation. "Mr. Walter, may I speak with you privately?" "Of course, dear. Let's go to the garden." "Sir, I wanted to talk about the woman who was at the clinic. Emily told me she was your boss's wife." "Yes, that's true. I took care of her a few times over those 3 years. She always asked about her family, always said she felt someone was waiting for her. I'm glad you took good care of her." "Sir, I wanted you to know she talked a lot about gardens, about white roses. She said she dreamed of a man who tended to plants with great care." Was she talking about me? I think so. She said this man had gentle hands and a kind heart, that he understood plants needed love to grow. Walter was moved to learn that, even without her memory, Margaret remembered him and the care he gave the garden. Thank you for telling me this, dear. It means a lot to know she didn't feel completely alone. Sir, may I see her? I'd like to know how she's doing now. Of course, I'll call her. When Margaret saw Rachel, her eyes filled with tears. Rachel, how are you here? Mrs. Margaret, what a joy to see you at home. You were one of the few people who treated me with kindness at the clinic. I always felt you truly cared. I did care. You were different from the other patients. You had a dignity, an elegance that stood out. Thank you for taking care of me. Mrs. Margaret, may I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy now? I'm healing, Rachel. Physically, I'm fine, but emotionally, I'm still adjusting. But yes, I'm happy to be home with my family. And the man you always mentioned? The one who tended to the plants? Margaret looked at Walter and smiled. This is Walter. He's much more than a gardener to our family. He was the one who discovered the truth and brought me back home. How wonderful. You always spoke of him so fondly that I imagined he must be someone very special. He truly is. And now we're tending to the garden together again. Rachel stayed for lunch and spoke at length with the family about the 3 years Margaret spent at New Hope Medical Center. Her observations helped everyone better understand what she had gone through during that time. Mrs. Margaret never gave up believing she had a family waiting for her, Rachel shared. Even on the hardest days, when her amnesia seemed complete, she held on to an inexplicable hope. What were those hard days like? Richard asked. She would grow very sad, cry a lot, and say she felt an emptiness in her chest she couldn't explain. But she always insisted something inside her knew there was a reason to keep living. It was love, Margaret said. Even without remembering, the love I have for all of you stayed alive within me. That's beautiful, Rachel remarked. At the clinic, we see many cases of people who lose all hope. You never did. I think the heart has its own memory, Walter observed. A memory that goes beyond the mind. It's true, Margaret agreed. I didn't remember faces, names, or details, but I remembered the feelings. I remembered feeling loved, protected, and cared for. After Rachel's visit, Margaret decided she wanted to do something to help other patients at New Hope Medical Center who were in situations similar to what she had experienced. Richard, I want to create a project to visit patients who don't receive family visits. What kind of project? A volunteer program. People who would go to the clinic regularly to talk with patients, do activities, and offer companionship. That's a wonderful idea, dear. Can I count on you to help organize it? Of course. And I think Tyler should be involved too. It might help him better understand what you went through. I agree. He needs to see firsthand the suffering he caused. Walter, Margaret turned to the gardener, would you like to be part of the project? It would be an honor, Ma'am. I could teach therapeutic gardening to the patients. Perfect. And Emily could help with the medical aspects given her nursing studies. I see you're planning to involve the whole family in this project, Richard smiled. It's just that my experience can't be in vain. If we can use what we've learned to help others, then all the suffering will have been worth it. A month after Margaret's return, the project was organized and the first visits to New Hope Medical Center began. Tyler participated actively, and his presence there made him reflect constantly on the consequences of his actions. Margaret, how can you come here without feeling angry at me? He asked during one visit. Tyler, anger would only hurt me more. I'd rather turn the pain into something positive. You're very strong. I'm not strong. I'm determined. Determined not to let what you did define the rest of my life. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me completely? Forgiveness is a process, Tyler. Every day I choose to forgive a little more. Some days it's easier, others it's harder. What can I do to make that process easier? Keep changing. Keep being the person you're becoming, not the person you were. During these visits, they met Mrs. Edith, an 80-year-old woman who had been at the clinic for 5 years without a single family visit. She had been abandoned by her children, and had no one left in the world. "Mrs. Edith," Margaret introduced herself. "I'm Margaret. I came to talk with you." "How kind of you, dear. How long has it been since anyone came to see me?" "Do you have family, Mum?" "I have 2 sons, but they don't come here. They say it's too far, that they don't have time." "When was the last time they visited?" 2 years ago, on my birthday. They came, stayed half an hour, and left." Margaret felt her heart tighten. Mrs. Edith's story reminded her of how she herself had felt abandoned during her 3 years at the clinic. "Mrs. Edith, from now on, you'll have regular visits. Our group comes here every week." "Really, my dear?" "Really. And we brought a friend who teaches gardening. Would you like to learn how to care for plants?" "Oh, I'd love that. I've always liked plants, but I never had a way to care for any here." Walter Jenkins approached with a small pot of violets. "Mrs. Edith, these violets are for you. I'll teach you how to care for them." "For me? No one has given me a gift in years." "Now you have a new family," Margaret said, holding the elderly woman's hand. "A chosen family, one that cares about you." Mrs. Edith began to cry, but they were tears of joy. "Thank you, my dear. Thank you for reminding me that I'm still someone who deserves love." Tyler Harrison, who had been watching the scene, stepped forward. "Mrs. Edith, I'm Tyler. I want to apologize on behalf of all the children who abandoned their parents." "Why, my boy?" "Because I almost abandoned my family too. I nearly did something terrible that would have destroyed the people I love." "But you didn't." "I did, Mrs. Edith, but I'm trying to make amends." "Then you're a good young man. Everyone deserves a second chance." Mrs. Edith's simplicity and wisdom deeply moved Tyler. He realized he was being given something many people never get, the chance to fix his mistakes. 3 months after starting the project at the clinic, the Harrison family received recognition from the hospital's administration for their volunteer work. But for them, the greatest reward was seeing patients like Mrs. Edith regain their joy for life. "Margaret," Richard said one evening as they walked through the garden, "you turned a tragedy into something beautiful." "We turned it, Richard, all of us together. Do you think our family will ever be completely healed?" "I don't know if some wounds ever fully heal, but I believe we can learn to live with them in a way that doesn't stop us from being happy." "And are you happy now?" "Yes, I am. Not in the same way as before, but I am. It's a more conscious happiness, a more grateful one. Sometimes I still wake up thinking you might disappear again." "That will fade with time, my love. Trust rebuilds little by little." "And Tyler? Do you think he's really changed?" "I think so. The work at the clinic has been transformative for him. He's learning the value of compassion." "I want to believe that." "Believe it, Richard. People can change when they find real motivation to do so." Walter Jenkins joined them in the garden, carrying a pot with a new sapling. "Mrs. Margaret, Mr. Richard, I brought something new for the garden." "What is it, Walter?" "It's a yellow ipe sapling. Mrs. Edith specifically asked us to plant one here at the mansion." "Why?" "She said the ipe is the tree of hope, that she wants to leave a symbol of the hope you've brought into her life." "What a beautiful gesture," Margaret said, moved. "Where would you like to plant it?" "There, near the fountain. That way it can grow strong and provide shade for the other plants." As they planted the ipe together, Margaret reflected on everything that had happened. 6 months earlier, she had been in a clinic without memory, without hope. Now she was planting a tree of hope in her own garden, surrounded by the family she loved so much. "Walter," she said, "I want to thank you once again for having the courage to reveal the truth." "Ma'am, I only did what any decent person would do." "No, Walter. Many people stay silent when they see injustice. You chose to act, even knowing you could face trouble." "The truth is always worth it, ma'am." "Yes, it is. However painful it may be, the truth always sets you free." Richard placed soil around the sapling of the yellow trumpet tree and watered it carefully. "This tree will grow alongside our renewed family," he said. "And when it blooms, it will be proof that there's always hope, even in the hardest times," Margaret added. "Ma'am," Walter observed, Do you know the yellow trumpet tree only blooms after several years? I do, but it's worth the wait. The best things in life require patience. That evening, Tyler came to dinner at the mansion for the first time since the truth had been revealed. It was an important step in the family's reconciliation. "How was work at the medical center today?" Richard asked. "Very good, Dad. I had a long talk with a gentleman who's been there for 7 years. He told me stories about his family, showed me old photos." "And how did it make you feel?" "Sad and grateful at the same time. Sad to see his suffering. Grateful that I still have time to fix what I did to our family." "That's a complicated feeling," Margaret remarked. "Margaret, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "When you were at the medical center, were there times you felt angry at the person who put you there?" "There were moments when I felt an unexplainable rage, a fury against an injustice I couldn't even name. But there were also moments of peace, when I simply accepted that this was my reality." "And now? Do you feel angry at me?" "Sometimes, Tyler, I won't lie. There are days I wake up angry about losing 3 years of my life. But then I look at all the good that came from this experience, and the anger fades." "What good things?" "The project at the medical center, the certainty that our family can overcome anything, the awareness of how strong love is, the chance to see you become a better person." "Do you really believe I can be a better person?" "I do, Tyler, but you have to believe it too. I'm trying. Try harder. It's worth it." 6 months after Margaret's return, the Harrison family held a gratitude celebration. They invited everyone who had been important during that difficult time. Walter and his family, Barbara, Rachel, some patients from the medical center who had already been discharged, and even Dr. Collins, who had sincerely regretted his involvement in the scheme. "Dr. Collins," Margaret addressed the doctor, "thank you for coming. Mrs. Margaret, I wasn't sure I should accept the invitation." "Of course you should. You're part of this story too. I'm so sorry for everything you went through because of me. Doctor, you made a serious mistake, but you acknowledged it and are trying to make amends. That means a lot. How can you be so generous? I've learned that holding on to bitterness only hurts us. I'd rather use my energy to build something good." "You're an extraordinary person." "No, Doctor. I'm just someone who chose forgiveness over revenge." During the celebration, Walter made a special toast. "I'd like to toast to the Harrison family, who taught me that the truth, however painful, is always worth it. To Mrs. Margaret, who taught us that love can overcome any obstacle. And to Mr. Tyler, who showed us it's never too late to change." "Walter," Richard replied, "we're the ones who should thank you. Without your courage, our family would still be broken." "Sir, I only planted a seed. You're the ones who nurtured it to grow." "And what a beautiful tree grew from that seed," Margaret added, looking around at all the people gathered at the party. Emily, Walter's daughter, approached Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret, can I tell you something?" "Of course, dear." "My dad came home every day these past 3 years worried about Mr. Richard. He always said he felt something was wrong but didn't know what." "That's so good to hear. He never wanted to interfere, but your husband's suffering really bothered him. Your father is a special man, Emily. You're lucky to have him as your dad." "I know. And now he's so happy to have helped bring your family back together." "We're very happy too." Barbara walked up to the two of them. "Maggie, I want to tell you something I found the other day." "What is it, Barb?" "I was organizing the papers I brought from Chicago and found a letter you wrote to me but never sent." "What letter?" "A letter from 2 weeks before the accident. You talked about discovering irregularities in the company and being worried about Tyler's reaction." "What did I say in the letter?" "You said you were afraid but couldn't stay silent in the face of injustice. You said you'd rather face the consequences of the truth than live with the weight of a lie." "And what do you think that means?" "That you already knew you were taking risks by confronting Tyler, but you chose to do what was right anyway." "It's the kind of choice that defines who we are," Margaret reflected. "Exactly. And now I understand why you can forgive so easily. You've always been this way, brave and fair." "I don't know if I'm brave, Barb. Sometimes I'm really scared." "Courage isn't the absence of fear, Maggie. It's doing what's right despite the fear. At the end of the party, when all the guests had left, the Harrison family gathered in the garden for a moment of reflection. A year ago, I never would have imagined we'd be here today, together and at peace, Richard said. Life has its surprises, Margaret replied. Sometimes the greatest tragedies turn into the greatest blessings. Margaret, do you regret anything? Tyler asked. I regret not discovering your irregularities in the company sooner. If I had, maybe we could have resolved everything without so much pain. But then maybe I wouldn't have learned the lesson I needed to learn. That's true. Maybe everything happened at the right time. What about you, Dad? Do you regret anything? I regret not paying more attention to the signs, not realizing you were in trouble. Dad, you couldn't have guessed what I was hiding. Even so, I feel like I failed as a father. Richard, Margaret interjected, you didn't fail as a father. You gave Tyler everything you could: love, education, opportunities. His choices aren't your responsibility. That's hard to accept. It's hard, but it's true. Everyone is responsible for their own choices. Walter, who had stayed late to help clean up after the party, joined the group. Excuse me, can I say something? Of course, Walter, everyone replied. These past few months have been the most meaningful of my life, not just because I helped resolve a difficult situation, but because I learned so much about family, forgiveness, and second chances. What did you learn specifically? Margaret asked. I learned that family isn't just blood. It's choice, it's care, it's presence. I learned that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let the past block the future. And I learned that second chances only work when someone truly wants to change. Those are very valuable lessons, Richard agreed, and I want to apply them to my own family. I want to be more present with Sharon and Emily. I want to talk more about my feelings. I don't want to let problems pile up. What a wonderful example, Walter, Tyler remarked. You inspire me to be a better man. Mr. Tyler, you already are. Change is a process and you're on the right path. That night, Margaret and Richard walked through the garden one last time before bed. It was a ritual they had resumed since her return. Richard, if you could go back in time, would you change anything? I'd change everything that led to suffering, but not the final outcome. Our family is stronger now. I feel the same way. It was terrible, but it taught us things we might not have learned otherwise. Like what? Not to take anything for granted, to cherish every day together, the importance of speaking hard truths before it's too late. And what about Tyler? Do you really believe he's changed? I believe he's changing, and that's already a lot. Sometimes I'm afraid it's just a phase that he'll go back to how he was before. Richard, we can't control his future choices. We can only support him while he's on the right path. And if he disappoints us again? Then we'll deal with it if it happens. But for now, let's have faith in his ability to change. You're very wise, Margaret. I'm not wise, just a woman who went through an extreme experience and learned to value what truly matters. A year and a half after Margaret's return, Tyler's transformation had solidified. He had paid off all his debts, was working at a different company to avoid conflicts with the family business, and had become one of the most dedicated volunteers at the New Hope Medical Center. Margaret, he said one morning as they helped a new patient settle in, I want to tell you something. What is it, Tyler? I've met a woman. That's wonderful. Tell me about her. Her name is Vanessa. She's a social worker who helps vulnerable families. How did you meet? Through volunteer work. She runs a project like ours at another institution. What do you like about her? She's dedicated, generous, and doesn't care about money or status. She sees me as I am now, not as I was before. Did you tell her about everything that happened? I did. She said the past matters less than the direction we choose for the future. She's right. And does she understand your process of change? She does, and she supports me. Sometimes, when guilt weighs on me, she reminds me that regret is important but shouldn't paralyze me. She sounds like a special person. She really is, and I'd like to introduce her to the family. Of course, Richard and I would love to meet her. Margaret, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Do you think I deserve to be happy after everything I've done? Tyler, Everyone deserves happiness, no matter their past mistakes. The question is whether you allow yourself to be happy. Sometimes I feel guilty when I'm happy. That's normal, but it's not healthy. You've already paid for what you did. Now you need to learn to live fully. How are you so balanced about all this? It didn't happen overnight. I went to therapy, talked a lot with Richard, reflected deeply, and most of all, I made a conscious choice not to let your betrayal define the rest of my life. You're an example to me, and you're becoming an example for others. Remember Mr. John from the clinic? He told me you inspired him to reconcile with his son. Really? Really? Your changes affect others, Tyler. That's a powerful thing. That afternoon, Tyler brought Vanessa to meet the family. She was a woman in her 30s, simple yet elegant, with a sincere smile and kind eyes. "Vanessa, welcome to our home," Margaret greeted her. "Thank you, Mrs. Margaret. Tyler talks about your family often." "We hope it's all good things," Richard joked. "It is," she replied. "He tells how you helped him become a better person." "Actually," Margaret corrected, "he helped himself. We just supported him." Tyler told me the whole story. I can only imagine how hard it must have been for everyone. "It was very hard," Richard confirmed, "but it was also transformative." "How so?" "We discovered our family is stronger than we thought. We learned the value of forgiveness, and we saw that people can truly change," Margaret explained. "That's beautiful. My family wasn't so lucky. When my brother made similar mistakes, my parents could never forgive him." "Every family is different," Walter, who was serving snacks, remarked. "Forgiveness is a choice not everyone can make." "Why were you able to?" Vanessa asked. "I think because we learned holding on to resentment hurts the one who holds it more than the one who made the mistake," Margaret answered. "And because we saw Tyler was truly remorseful and willing to change," Richard added. "Not everyone who makes mistakes shows genuine remorse," Tyler observed. "I was lucky to have a family that recognized my sincerity." "It wasn't luck, son. It was earned. You won back our trust through consistent actions." Vanessa stayed for dinner and fit in naturally with the family. It was clear she and Tyler complemented each other well, and she had a positive influence on him. "Vanessa," Margaret asked during dinner, "what's it like working with families in vulnerable situations?" "It's challenging but very rewarding. You see firsthand how small actions can change entire lives. It must be similar to our work at the clinic." "It is. And Tyler has been a great help with our projects. He has a special sensitivity for understanding people's pain." "Why do you think he has that sensitivity?" Richard asked. "Because he suffered. Those who've experienced pain recognize it in others more easily." "That's a very wise observation," Walter commented. "And it's true," Tyler agreed. "Before I couldn't see others suffering because I was too focused on myself. Now I can look beyond my own needs." "That's one of the biggest changes I've noticed in you," Margaret said. "You've developed real empathy." "It was a painful process, but necessary." "The best growth often is," Vanessa remarked. After dinner, Vanessa asked to see the garden Tyler had mentioned so often. "This is the garden Walter has tended for 15 years, Margaret guided her through the space. "It's beautiful. And these are the famous roses." "Yes, the white roses that helped me hold on to hope during my 3 years at the clinic." "How so?" "I dreamed of these roses, even without remembering where I knew them from. They represented something good, something worth remembering." "And this trumpet tree?" Vanessa asked, looking at the now grown tree. "It's the tree of hope. We planted it when I came home, as a symbol of renewal." "Has it bloomed yet?" "Once, last year. Tyler cried when he saw the first flowers." "Why?" "Because they showed that good things can bloom even after hard times," Tyler explained. "How lovely. Can I plant something here too?" "Of course." Margaret was moved. "What would you like to plant?" "Sunflowers. They always remind me to seek light, even on the darkest days." "Perfect. Walter can help you choose the best spot." "It would be an honor, Miss Vanessa," Walter offered. As they planted the sunflowers, Vanessa talked with Walter about the family's history. Walter, what was it like discovering the truth about Margaret? It was frightening, miss. I didn't know if I should interfere or not. What made you decide to tell? Seeing Richard's suffering. I couldn't bear to see him suffer, thinking his wife was dead anymore. Weren't you afraid of the consequences? I was, yes, but the fear of staying silent was greater than the fear of speaking up. You're very brave. I'm not brave, I just did what was right. Sometimes doing what's right takes a lot of courage. That's true, but it's worth it. Just look how happy this family is now. And you? Are you happy with the outcome? Very happy. My family also grew closer after all this. We learned to appreciate each other more. How so? My wife and daughter saw how important it is to talk about feelings, not to let problems pile up. We talk more now. That's wonderful. So everyone gained something from this experience. Everyone, yes. Even Dr. Collins is redeeming himself, working for free at community clinics. 2 years after Margaret's return, Tyler and Vanessa announced their engagement. The family was overjoyed by the news. Tyler, I'm so happy for you. Margaret hugged him. Thank you, Margaret. Your example of forgiveness and strength inspired me to believe I deserved a second chance at love too. Vanessa is a wonderful woman. You two were made for each other. She makes me want to be a better person every day. And you, Vanessa, how does it feel to be part of this family? Richard asked. I feel honored. You've taught me so much about unconditional love and forgiveness. We're the ones who learned from you. You brought even more light to our family. We want to have the wedding here in the garden, Tyler announced. What a beautiful idea, Margaret clapped. Walter, could you handle the floral decorations? It would be an honor, ma'am. I'll make the garden more beautiful than it's ever been. And I'd like white roses to be the main flowers, Vanessa requested. They represent this whole story of rebirth. Perfect, Walter agreed. I'll prepare everything with great care. The wedding preparations took 3 months. The whole family got involved in the planning, and the event became a celebration not just of Tyler and Vanessa's love, but of the renewal of the entire Harrison family. Margaret, Barbara said as they helped with the final touches, have you ever stopped to think about how much our family has grown these years? How so? Before it was just you, Richard and Tyler. Now we have Vanessa. Walter and his family are also part of it. The friends from the clinic. Our family has grown so much. That's true. The hardships brought people together. And how do you feel about that? I think it's wonderful. Family isn't just blood, it's choice. And we chose to include many people in our circle of love. Do you think Tyler and Vanessa will be happy? I believe so. They met after he changed, so their relationship is based on who he is now, not who he was before. And does that make a difference? All the difference. Relationships based on lies don't last. Theirs is built on truth and mutual growth. On the wedding day, the garden looked breathtaking. Walter had outdone himself with the decorations, creating a magical setting with white roses, sunflowers, and delicate lights scattered among the trees. Walter, you've worked a miracle, Margaret praised him. Thank you, Ma'am. I wanted it to be special for Mr. Tyler. It's more than special, it's perfect. Ma'am, can I tell you something? Of course. When I was a child, my grandmother always said gardens are places of renewal, that just as plants are reborn each season, people can be reborn too. Your grandmother was very wise. She was. And today, seeing this wedding take place here in the garden, after everything we've been through, I feel she was right. The garden truly is a place of renewal. It was here that I reconnected with life when I came back from the clinic. And this is where Mr. Tyler planted the first seeds of his transformation when he started helping with the plants. That's true. This garden holds very special memories for our family. The ceremony was simple and moving. Tyler was radiant, Vanessa was beautiful, and everyone present could feel the positive energy of the moment. Tyler, Richard said during his speech as the groom's father, a few years ago I thought I had lost not only my wife but also my son. Today I see that I've actually gained an even larger and stronger family. Vanessa, Margaret added, thank you for loving my stepson as he is today, for supporting his journey of growth, and for bringing even more love into our family. And thank you, Walter, Tyler said unexpectedly during his own speech, for having the courage to reveal the truth. Without you, none of this would have been possible. Walter was moved to be publicly acknowledged as the silent hero of the whole story. Mr. Tyler, I only did what was right. The credit for the change is all yours. No, Walter, you planted the seed of truth. We just nurtured it so it could grow. And what a beautiful tree grew from that seed, Vanessa added, looking around at all the people gathered at the celebration. During the party, Mrs. Edith, who had become something of an adoptive grandmother to the family, approached Margaret. My dear, what a beautiful celebration. Thank you, Mrs. Edith. We're very happy. You know what moves me the most? What? Seeing how suffering can turn into joy when people choose love instead of hatred. You're right, it's a conscious choice. And you made the right choice. Just look at how many happy people are here today because of it. Mrs. Edith, you've taught us so much about forgiveness and acceptance. Me? I didn't do anything? Yes, you did. Your wisdom and your ability to find joy, even after being abandoned by your own children, inspired us greatly. Oh, my dear, when you reach my age, you learn that holding on to grudges only hurts yourself. And that's a lesson that applies at any age. It's true. Forgiveness frees the one who forgives more than the one who is forgiven. At the end of the party, when all the guests had left, the family gathered in the garden for one final moment of celebration. What a perfect day, Vanessa sighed, still in her wedding dress. It really was, Tyler agreed, hugging his wife. Thank you, everyone, for making this day so special. Thank you for letting us celebrate your renewal, Margaret replied. Our renewal, Richard corrected, because all of us have been renewed these past few years. That's true, Walter added. My family has also been renewed. My wife always says I've been happier since I helped resolve this situation. And your daughter, Walter, how is she? Vanessa asked. Emily graduated as a nurse and is working at the clinic where Mrs. Margaret was treated. She oversees the volunteer program you all started. What a beautiful coincidence, Margaret said, touched. It's not a coincidence, Walter smiled. It's the circle of life completing itself. How so? You were treated there and suffered. Now my daughter works there and helps other patients avoid suffering the way you did. What a beautiful way to see it, Walter. That's how I see life, ma'am. Everything has a purpose, even the bad things. And what was the purpose of everything we went through? Tyler asked. I think it was to teach us that family is stronger than any hardship, Richard answered. And that the truth is always worth it, even when it's painful, Margaret added. And that people can truly change when they have enough motivation, Vanessa contributed. And that small actions can have big consequences, Walter concluded. That night, as Tyler and Vanessa traveled for their honeymoon, Margaret and Richard walked through the garden one last time, as they did every evening. Richard, are you happy? Completely happy, my dear, and you? I am too. It's a different happiness than what I felt before everything happened. How so? Before, I was happy without knowing why. Now I'm happy knowing exactly why. It's a more conscious, more grateful happiness. And what about the future? How do you see it? I see it with hope. Tyler is married to a wonderful woman. Our family is united. We have meaningful projects at the medical center. And us? How do you see our future? I see many years ahead tending to this garden, welcoming grandchildren to play here, growing old together with dignity. Grandchildren? Who knows? Tyler and Vanessa might give us that joy. That would be wonderful. It would. And just imagine, children playing where there was once only sadness and suffering. The garden truly is a place of renewal. It is. And do you know what my greatest joy will be? What? Telling our grandchildren the story of the garden, the story of how love and truth always win in the end, and telling them about Walter, who was brave enough to reveal the truth. Absolutely. Walter will always be a hero to our family. Margaret, May I ask you one last question? Of course. If you could send a message to the Margaret who was hospitalized at the medical center, what would you say? Margaret thought for a few seconds before answering. I would say, don't give up. Even when everything seems lost, don't give up hope. Your family is looking for you, and you will find each other again. And when that happens, you'll be stronger than you were before. Beautiful message. And you? What message would you send to the Richard who wept at the cemetery? I would say, she didn't die, your love didn't die, and very soon you'll be together again, more grateful for each other than you ever were before. They embraced in the middle of the garden, surrounded by the white roses that had witnessed the family's entire journey. The hope tree stood majestically in the background, ready to bloom again in the next season. The end. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your honest words in the comments. Do you believe Margaret made the right choice in forgiving Tyler? We love reading your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us.